Presentation number 8 on using your graphing calculator. Today we're going to be looking at the zoom and trace functions. Specifically, if you turn on your calculator, click on the zoom, which is right here, we will be looking at the Z box, the Z in, zoom in, and the zoom out. We will also be looking at zoom standard. The four things that we'll be looking at are zoom box, zoom in, zoom out, and zoom standard. Also, we will be looking at the trace function, which is right here. Okay, I'm going to hit quit. To start, we're going to go to our calculator and we're going to enter in a graph. Let's say we wanted to graph some random line, 2x plus 1. Then I hit enter, good habit, and now I hit graph. What the heck do I have here? I don't see anything. Not a thing. If I go to window, we haven't talked about the window, but if I go to the window and I look, my minimum x value is 6 point something. My maximum x value is 11. My minimum y is almost 5, and my maximum y is almost 10. I am somewhere in the first quadrant, which is ridiculous. I want to see the whole graph. But my smallest x value is a positive number. My smallest y value is a positive number. I'm in the first quadrant. So, go back to zoom. We're just going to hit 6. Zoom standard. Standard because we want the standard screen. So I hit standard number 6, boom, and now we have our standard screen. If you ever have a screen that doesn't look like this, and you want it to look like this, just hit zoom and then 6. It'll take you to the standard default screen. Now if I look at window, smallest x is -10, largest is positive, smallest y is -10, largest is positive. If for some reason I felt inclined to change this, I could, let's see, delete. I could make that a 1, -1, and I could make that a +1. I just clicked 1 with my computer keyboard. It was a 10. We'll go back. And I just hit 1. And my keyboard worked. And I hit, I'll clear that. Go to graph. And you see it changes. All right. This is +1. This is -1. I can change it in here. It's awkward. Probably you won't want to do that very often. So we'll go back to zoom 6. Okay. That's the zoom button. The other button I wanted to briefly talk about today, and I'll mention it in passing again, is the trace. Now we looked at finding, using the second calc, we found maximum, minimum values, and we found zeros. The trace button will give us approximations. The trace button moves along our graph using the left and right arrow, and as it moves along, it gives us x coordinates and y coordinates. So here, it actually gives us the exact y-intercept. And if I go here, I'm at 0.14, pretty close to 0. Click once more, and -0.27. So I'm right around the y equals 0. And we see that x is around -0.6, -0.4. So it's probably about negative 0.5. If you just need an approximation, you can use the trace. Now I say it's approximately negative 0.5. This is a little bit above 0. This is a little bit below 0. Just for the heck of it, let's go to second, calc, 0, and see where we are. Left bound, enter, move to the right, enter, no guess, and we're at negative 0.5. So we made a good educated guess. If that's all you need, doing the trace button can be relatively simple. All right, next buttons that I wanted to talk to you about are the zoom in and zoom out. Zoom in, number 2, just zooms in. It looks at a smaller and smaller piece of the graph. So if I click on zoom in and I go to 2, the cursor, right now the cursor is right here. You can move it up, down, left, right. The cursor is the key here. Wherever the cursor is will become the center of your screen. So I click enter. To reiterate, here I'm going to hit second quit. Go to graph. I go to second, oops. I go to zoom. I want to go to zoom in. And now pay attention to where my cursor is. I just hit enter. And I zoom in. Now my cursor is right here. I want that to be the center of my screen. Hit enter again. I zoom in even more. I can zoom in again. All right. But again, my cursor is where I want the center of the screen is going to be at the cursor. So I'm looking at the intersection here. If for some reason I needed to zoom in a ridiculous amount like that, I could. Now, I'm going to go to zoom standard. Look at my graph again. If I wish to zoom out, I go to zoom 3. Again, my cursor, which is at 0, 0, will be the center of my screen. Hit enter. Hit enter again. You really don't see much difference, but if you go to window, my minimum X is negative 160, my maximum X is positive 160, minimum Y is negative 160, maximum X is positive 160. I have really zoomed out to a crazy level. All right, I'm going to go back to standard. All right, let's look at another function where the zooming will actually help us. So I'm going to clear my function. I'm going to type in x raised to the third power plus 1.5x squared. Remember, last week some of you had this problem. You need to hit this button on your calculator first. On here, it doesn't matter. But after you hit the 3 on the cubed, you must hit that button. Plus 1.5 x squared minus x minus 1.5. Enter. Good rule of thumb. Graph. And I have my graph here. Now I really can't see what's going on right here. Does my graph pass through? Are there 2 zeros? Or is my graph tangent to this? So now I'm going to look at the zoom box. So I'm going to click here on zoom. I'm going to go to box. With zoom box, I can make a little box and I zoom in just to that area. So what we want to do is establish the corners of the box. Right now, the cursor is at 0, 0. I'm going to go up and I'm going to go over. I establish the top left corner of my box. I hit enter. And now I'm going to zoom down and I'm going to zoom to the right. I could also zoom to the left to make my box like that, but I'm establishing diagonal corners of the box. I establish this and I establish this. I'm going to make it a little bit more and maybe a little bit like that. Yeah, I'll go down a little bit. And now I hit enter. Now I can see that I actually have a 0 here, a 0 here. I have a maximum value here, and I have a minimum value here. We call this a local maximum and a local minimum. If I go to trace, I can see that my minimum is about -1.6. I can see that my 0 is about 1. Going the other way, I can see that my 0, I'm right about 0 here, is about -1. My maximum is about negative, at x equals -1.3. My maximum is 0.14. And I'm about 0. I have another 0 at about -1.5. The box zoom is very, very handy to zoom in on a spot that you are interested in. So now I'm going to go to zoom, hit standard, and then I'm actually going to shut my calculator off. Well, I'm going to try. Second off. Okay. To reiterate, we talked about the zoom functions: zoom in, zoom out. Your cursor will be the center of the screen. We talked about the zoom box, where you establish diagonal corners. And we looked at the zoom standard, which returns you to the default screen, which you will use a lot. And lastly, we looked at the trace function, which just helps us to guesstimate, estimate if you will, our zeros. Thank you for listening to presentation number 8. Have a great day.